Tonight, close to 10 dealers in cannabis and other hard drugs apprehended by security forces here in the economic capital Douala. Also ahead, Mancho, BBC and Co would have to return to the military tribunal again on the 13th of April 2018 despite calls from actors of the civil society for their release. And also in this newscast, critics say that the visit of the Minister of Territorial Administration, Paul Atanganji, to Anglophone regions of Cameroon was simply a non-event. Those are headlines. Stay with us for the details. We shall be right back. Good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you so much for joining us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinoxe Television. Let's begin right here with one of the biggest feasts, Christian feast in Cameroon and beyond, that would be celebrated in a few days from now. Catholic Christians as well as those of the Presbyterian Church will be celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's going to be on Easter Sunday, but before, today was the Holy Thursday. Christians at the Metropolitan Archdiocese here in the economic capital Douala were told to be humble and faithful, holy, as was the case with their Savior Jesus Christ. The Archbishop of the Metropolitan Archdiocese in Douala was speaking during the Mass that took place in the city of Douala today. Our reporter Emerencia Kondak tells us more in this report.
At the Metropolitan Cathedral in Douala this Holy Thursday were dozens of priests to renew their vows once more before God. During this Mass led by the Archbishop of the Douala Metropolitan Archdiocese, the priests were reminded of their role as servants of the people, preachers of the Word of God, and appointed servants of the Most High. Another important aspect of the Holy Thursday is the symbolic washing of the legs of Christians by men of God. According to Reverend Paul Nyanga, this aspect of the Holy Thursday portrays humility and love.
To wash one another's feet is a sign of love. A priest or a bishop is a man of love, and he who loves washes the feet of those who are entrusted to him.
The Holy Thursday marks the end of the period of the Lent. It is time for Christians to fortify their faith through prayers while preparing for the crucifixion, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ on Easter Sunday.
I took my resolutions to take care of the poor, to avoid myself from being distracted. The resolution I took this Lenten period was I had to pray, do fasting.
Archbishop Samuel Cleather has told Christians to be prayerful and be ready to be at the service of the community.
And the fight against insecurity intensifies here in the economic capital Douala. The Ndokbong Gendarmerie Brigade in Douala has apprehended 8 suspected cannabis smokers and vendors of contraband drug. Meanwhile, 4 bags of marijuana were equally seized from an alleged bandit. The trafficker is said to have escaped before the arrival of security forces. Let's have the details with Rabiatu Aliyu in the following story.
The bag being brought down doesn't contain food items nor dresses. It is the lifeless body of a 3-year-old that was being transported. According to the alleged father of the child, there was no money to pay the official rate, reasons why they decided to put the body in a bag for onward burial. Unfortunately, the special miscontrol on the National Road number 5, precisely at Mbangam, wasn't convinced with the reasons given to them, owing to the fact that he hadn't any document to prove his innocence. He was another victim of the special miscontrol at Mbanga. The young man who claimed to be a marine officer couldn't master his matricle number, nor the name given to a military who works with the marine.
avec les chasseurs. Je lui demande combien on appelle les militaires de la marine. Il dit que le maréchal,
For the commander of the Gendarmerie Company office at Mbanga, Bonaventure Esaga, it is in conformity with instructions from the hierarchy that we conducted such an impromptu check, which gave us the right to look into car boots and mission orders. But during this special control, we caught a bag.
As we could see, that was instead the report of Smanjikan Gabriel of at least 5 persons that have been detained and 2 stolen vehicles recovered by a mixed control organized by gendarmerie officials in Banga of the Mungo division of Cameroon. 4 persons were equally arrested after they were caught with a lifeless body in a bag that was a child, as Manjikan Gabriel indicated in the report that just ended. Now, 8 suspected dealers and smokers of cannabis have equally been apprehended by gendarmerie officials, precisely those of the Ndokbong Gendarmerie Brigade here in the economic capital Douala. They are currently under police custody, as Rabiato Aliou tells us in the following report.
Celui-là, je ne connais pas, c'est pas mon paquet. Même celui-ci n'est non plus mon paquet.
8 suspected cannabis smokers and vendors brandishing a toxic herb in the premises of the Ndokbong Gendarmerie Brigade.
On vend 100 francs. Moi, à mon temps, je prenais juste un seul quand je primais.
They are under gendarmerie custody for selling the contraband drug to students and other persons around the localities of Bedi, Bonamusadi, Cité de Palmiers and Bepanda. It is thanks to the collaboration of some students and principals of schools in reporting the criminal activity that the hoodlums were apprehended. Most of them say they were not in possession of the toxic herb by the time they were intercepted.
On a pris sans rien. Je dis bien sans rien. Je vous le jure.
Some of them admitted they smoked the toxic herb while claiming that they do not know their suppliers.
Moi, je ne peux pas parler de livraison parce que moi, je parlais souvent acheter quand je fumais, j'étais un seul.
One of the suspects says he is innocent.
I had nothing on me. The thing is that actually I went to collect battery from one of the guys because I just actually bought a new phone. So as I went to collect the phone, the battery, police people came and they mixed all of us together.
He claims to be a business person.
I don't even smoke. I sell trousers in the market of Bonamusadi. As last now, I'm one of the victims. I only have to call my parents to come and check on me here.
Meanwhile, 4 bags of marijuana weighing about 160 kilograms have been seized by gendarmes in Ndokbong from a trafficker. Gendarme officers were informed by unknown sources of its arrival in Douala from the northwest region. It is alleged that the woman transporting the stock of cannabis was not met at the agency by forces of law and order. She was alerted before their arrival. Investigation is ongoing to track down the woman.
Meantime, threats of piracy and other maritime transborder crimes that were on a sharp rise in the Gulf of Guinea some years back is gradually being reduced by the multinational exercise dubbed Obangame Express, as the exercise gains steam with the number of participating countries increase at a 100% rate and the scope of range of objective widening. These maritime threats are significantly being dealt with. The number of countries taking part in the U.S.-sponsored multinational maritime exercise has increased from 4 in 2010 to close to 40, and its scope has extended as far as South and Angola, as well as in the West. In Ivory Coast, Obangame Express 2018 has extended in Cameroon, a country that has been a strong participant, hosting 5 of the past 8 editions, and the special force component for the past 4 years. In each edition, Navy officers of participating countries are equipped with new and higher techniques and strategies to fight against maritime insecurity. For greater details, here is an extract of James Clovis. He is a U.S. Navy instructor. He told Equinoxe television about the purpose of the come together. Take a listen.
Equinoxe Express 2018 continues in a large history of maritime relations with the United States Navy and the Cameroonian Navy. I've participated in Equinoxe Express since 2008, since 2011, excuse me, and I've been nothing but honored with the opportunity to share our knowledge, our experience, our maritime operation guidance with the Cameroonian Navy. We're happy and pleased for all of the activities that we had in 2018, and we also look forward to 2019 so we can build upon the success within Cameroon as well as within the region. That includes the Gulf of Guinea region, Sao Tome and Principe, as well as Gabon. They're successful at maritime operations, they're successful at mock operations. We are working to build communications, we are working to reinforce communications between interagencies as well as mocks, as well as regional cooperation amongst the other regional players. So there were no major issues. We are working to improve communication. Communication has always been a challenge and it will continue to be a challenge, but we are working towards progress.
It is more than a decade now that residents of Lum have been suffering from water crisis. They have to cover long distances to be able to get the precious liquid in some localities, and in several cases, on several occasions, the source of the water is doubtful. Authorities are still to react on the situation, as Rabiatu Aliyu tells us in this report.
Passing through the Mungo division in the Litwa region of Cameroon, its beautiful sceneries and rich grasslands must be noticed. The problem lies in a village called Lum Kilomètre 99. The population here have for over 10 years suffered from water scarcity. They cover long distances to fetch water, which still has bad color and smell. Water doesn't flow in our taps for more than 10 years now. We rent motorbikes to fetch water from streams. The quality of water is so bad that we fall sick all the time. Water scarcity in schools poses enormous problems. This nursery school teacher explains that children fall sick because they drink rainwater and water from other doubtful sources. Children in this nursery school bring containers of water to school. The fight for the precious liquid is evident. Inhabitants of the locality have taken measures to ameliorate the situation. Those who live across the roads in the main town have dug holes where their meters were initially installed. They sell water which flows from these burst pipes from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. It flows slowly and the queue is always long. Inhabitants of Lum Kilomètre 99 say that authorities are aware, but no modalities have been put in place to solve this water crisis. Exposed to all sorts of disease, they said there is need for an urgent solution to be provided.
And after the Minister of Territorial Administration, as we announced in the headlines, visited the two Anglophone regions of Cameroon hit by socio-political crisis, critics have termed his visit or his tour as a cosmetic way of addressing the Anglophone crisis. The spokesperson of the Aya family, Aya Abine, was categorical that dialogue would only take place after the safe return of fleeing Anglophone Cameroonians in neighboring Nigeria and the release of those that are currently behind bars. Details in the following report.
There is no Anglophone problem in Cameroon, and I've given facts to justify what I say. I'm saying it today, I will say it tomorrow.
This is Paul Natanganji on December 2016, denying the existence of what has become the Anglophone problem. The declaration was received with a lot of criticisms from Anglophone activists who have for close to 2 years now been fighting for the restoration of their educational, legal and cultural values. More than 1 year after the controversial statement, Paul Atanganji, who is now Minister of Territorial Administration during his visit, the Anglophone regions brandished peace plans, which to many is a way of reconciling with the embattled and embittered English-speaking population. In reaction, Aya Abine described the move as a non-event.
I begin by saying those same peace plans were held by citizens on the 22nd of September and the 1st of October, the same peace plans, and they were shot with live bullets, they were killed, others were detained, and so on. So for the minister to hold a peace plans, proning peace, while citizens lost their life with those same peace plans, is a little confusing to me. I would believe it was just a waste of time, it was cosmetic.
Messenger of peace.
Minister Paul Atanganji, according to the spokesperson of the Aya family, should have visited conflict-hit and deserted localities like Kwakwa, Kembong and Mamfi if he is genuinely worried about the situation of youths hiding in bushes in Anglophone Cameroon.
I expected him to visit Kembong, Kwakwa, Didi village, Akwaya, those places that are hugely responsible for the thousands, tens of thousands of refugees we have in Nigeria. He did none of that. I'm not surprised he didn't do it. I knew he would not do it because they know the reality on the ground. And this reality is caused by our military that is trained and well-trained. It's very extraordinary that a well-trained military can burn down villages of citizens it has to protect. His going down to the south and northwest region was a tour to present himself as a newly elected Anglophone into a post that has been clamored by Anglophones for a long time. It in no way would solve the current crisis.
Aya Abine concluded that the much talked about dialogue should not be conditioned and that it would only take place after the plight of fleeing Anglophone refugees are addressed and prisoners of the Anglophone crisis released.
I don't believe there can be any genuine dialogue anytime soon without good faith coming from the government. Good faith would require that the government, first of all, sends a delegation to Nigeria to visit its citizens that are in Nigeria, dying, prostituting, and begging on Nigerian streets. We did this when people who plotted to overthrow Biya were caught and arrested and dumped into prison. We released them. They are occupying posts of responsibility in police now, a number of them. Why can't we do it to citizens of our country that just came out with peace plans saying, hey, there is a problem, let's solve it. We have talked about inclusive dialogue. I'm not the one who used that term. The UN has used it, civil society organizations have used it, inclusive dialogue. If that dialogue has to be inclusive, it would include everybody and not just a few, especially the radicals. The moderates have lost their voice, that we are okay. The radicals have gained a lot of ground because we have multiplied wrong decision after wrong decision.
And Mancho, BBC and other detainees of the Anglophone crisis charged with secession, terrorism, threatening public peace, among several other charges levied against them, would still have to wait before the court decides on their judgment. The case between them and the state was today adjourned to April 13th for deliberations on the request of the state prosecutor in the nation's capital. Amongst the lawyers present in court today to defend them were Barrister Agbobala, Emmanuel Sim, Benze Eric and Louisa Songwe. It should be noted yesterday that the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa and REDAC in a joint statement called for their unconditional and immediate release. And that brings us to the end of this first segment of the news. Time for us to meet our guests. We shall be right back. Tonight, we have as guest the political analyst, Mr. Aku John Aku. Thank you so much for joining us once again tonight on Talking Point.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine. Every time there are issues concerning Cameroon, we are there to give an opinion.
Of course, we are here tonight to talk about issues happening in Cameroon. One of the recent happenings is the visit of the Minister of Territorial Administration to the two Anglophone regions. We saw his movements, his gesture, his declarations to the people. He was holding peace plant. But many are saying that the message of peace that he's taking to the region is coming a little bit too late when the crisis has already escalated. Is a peace message enough to quell the rising tension in the two Anglophone regions, Mr. Akojon?
Yeah, Mimi, I always doubt the positions of the powers in Cameroon. I will equally, maybe at the first time, that the Minister for Territorial Administration was taking contact with the crisis zone of the Northwest region, an effort which we might equally applaud. But then, as you rightly said, the same peace plan he took to the Northwest region, the same peace plan he took to the Southwest region was the same peace plan Anglophone Cameroonian held on the 22nd of September 2017. But what did they receive? Gunshots, killing, brutality from the military. It means now that the government is becoming on the opposite side of the regime. The same plan that was for peace came in the time when the state gave an order for outright killing and massacre of this same group of people. Then you see, took the plan and gave to some of the chiefs and funds, and these very funds equally saying they are ready for peace. Peace plan by the protesters in southern or Anglophone regions was equally giving us that they were for peace, but then the peace was met with brutality and force from the military. If you take, for example, it is not because you are holding a peace plan, it may just be a protocol gesture. Some of the chiefs and funds equally telling the minister that they are ready to cooperate with him. Without to what extent they want to cooperate, are they not doing so because of their own private interests rather than the interests of serving Cameroonians? You will equally come to realize that a lot of those actions that have been taken by the states, most of them remains as a propaganda to tell us that the state is in action. But at the end of the day, most of those decisions are futile. Nothing concrete, nothing in reality is happening. We can even visit a lot of them. You realize the Bilingualism Commission, which we are still seeing after the visitations of the various departments of the military, the ministries, and the various regions, nothing in reality has changed from whatsoever we call the Bilingualism Commission.
You are actually questioning whether the minister had the interest of the English-speaking population at heart. He has talked about the need for those that are hiding in bushes to return, and that chiefs have to play their role in ensuring that those children that are currently hiding in bushes should return. What do you have to say about that?
First of all, you will realize that the Minister of Territorial Administration, if there has been an individual that foiled up the massacre in the Northwest and the Southwest region, I believe the present Minister of Territorial Administration is one. He has been on the very first time telling the government that there is nothing like an Anglophone problem. And so we start doubting, what solution are you seeking? What are you resolving? What are you trying to tell the chiefs? And most often, we realize that the chieftaincy, which is said to be non-political or political, today many of them are propaganda agents of the state, and many have one position to go to the Senate or are the members of parliament. At the end of the day, how do this particular individual represent the persons? Are they representing the people of Cameroon, or they are representing and protecting their political position?
Telling the people to return, we got the reaction of the spokesperson of the Aya family. In the people of Kembong, Manu, in Division General, in the southwest region of the country, we have the people of Meme, some localities like Mbonge, we have Kwakwa in Mbonge, where people have actually escaped to other safer localities, to tell them to return to their respective localities without going there to see the situation on the ground, like make an assessment as to why the people actually had to escape to other localities. Is it really reassuring for the population?
Yeah, it is a statement that is made, and every administrator will have a reason to give such an opinion. Even the administrators in the two regions, in fact the governors, they have all been calling for people to be calm, to come back. But what do we realize? We realize that a lot of times, those who die as civilians are being killed by the military from their stray bullets. We see a lot of curfews, not coming out, don't come out, stay on, stay in, and all the like. The people have been victimized by the presence of the military in the field. So what we have to do is, to me, as I said, if we take the security out of the roads, you take the armories. In fact, when you go to Manfi, you realize that we're in a war zone, that you realize war armors passing left and right at every juncture. A father is afraid to send a child out. So those who are going to come back, remember, on this same channel before, on the eve of the senatorial elections, I said elections cannot be organized with part of the Cameroonian people out of this territory. we need to first of all give them a reason to come back. And this duty falls more on the state. The state must guarantee through its institution that there is a reason for us to come back. At the other side, you are telling those who are owning arms to come back. Who are they? I have said you are within a guerrilla warfare. You don't even know whether the neighbor you are sitting with, his gun is based in the forest, why in the house, he is a civilian, but few minutes after you find himself within your back with a machete or a gun. Who is or who are this group of persons whom you are asking them to drop down their weapons and they will be forgiven by the state?
What do you think the government can do to ensure that those that have escaped to Nigeria should return?
We have said one. In fact, before the crisis got to this level, you will realize that many Anglophone Cameroonians are in prison. The first reason to be a sincere government is to release everybody without condition. And if the government can find time not to be toiling the corridors of the courtyards with a lot of Cameroonians, in fact, very neat and clean Cameroonians who are fighting for the peace and freedom of this generation, all of them are in prison because of a demand they have made to their government. Free everybody without condition. I mean, they were caught because of a crisis, and if we realize that there's a reason for this crisis, then there's a reason to free everybody that aired out his position during this period. And again, we are calling for sincere dialogue. It is not sincere dialogue where we have a listener and a dictator. We talk of two equals sitting on the same table to discuss in whatsoever we call pari passu. And they are going to do that not because there are some points which are negotiable and others non-negotiable. Everything, whosoever they are, will be negotiable on the same table, and nothing should be done under the table.
And that the dialogue should be inclusive. Like
this is what we're saying, including the civil society. We mean, when you see what has happened before the arrest of Agbongbala and the suspension of the consortium, we appointed a government agent. In fact, you know a lot of them that went to Bamina to negotiate with these people. What position were they protecting? They were protecting state interests and forgetting that the state belongs to the people and that the people are the state. And when they stand within this position, they always feel like they are bigger than the other. We need a neutral party to be an initiator to this particular negotiation. Why not call the clergy? Why not appoint a bishop? Why not look for people of the civil society to lead such a sincere dialogue where all Cameroonians will talk as equal and share or give solutions to the Cameroonian problem? In fact, many have said the Anglophone problem is a Cameroonian problem, which equally needed a Cameroonian solution. So the Cameroonian solution will not be taking military to kill, to loot, or to burn down houses in various villages. A lot of this, I mean, is already creating hatred between the citizens and whatsoever we call the state agents.
And the tension could be perceived during the senatorial election. We see the Social Democratic Front is already filing petitions at the Constitutional Council to call for the total cancellation of the election in the southwest region of the country, citing the tension in Bangam and irregularities in the BLM. What do you have to say about the general conduct of the election, especially in those regions? Yeah, when you look at the senatorial election, in fact, in some regions, it was bound to be no game because it was manipulated from the onset. Since the CPDM, you look at the date of the election, elections were to be held on the 25th. The CPDM celebrated its anniversary on the 24th, meaning there was already a Hamas intention to have one party representative at the level of the Senate. This we have said that there were even going to be no senatorial elections. Cameroonians needed first the municipal elections, the regional council elections, the president of the regions, before we move to the Senate. Now, we even doubt the legitimacy of the Senate, not only the election, the whole process of the senatorial election was totally fake. If councillors, municipal councillors, the lone voters for this election, where are the regional councillors? And the invalidity, I said, if we even have to petition at the level of the Constitutional Council, we go to the legitimacy of the senators, which means only one group is there to vote and the others have no access because the institution does not exist. Why then the need for the existence of the Senate? So what would be your balance sheet? Because the senators that have their mandate is almost ending, even though they are holding their session in the nation's capital. Yeah, what would be your evaluation of their 5-year balance sheet? Yeah, there have been no results. I said many Cameroonians said this organ is costing Cameroonians about 38 billion every year. And when you look at the results, what do they produce? It's a center for retirement agents, those who have worked for the party. And so they have basically been compensated by the state to finance, in fact, to spend lavishly the finances and taxes of Cameroonians. We need to look at it when you even see the creation and the composition of the Constitutional Council, what results will even come from such an organ, which 90%
of its composition are ex-CPDM members or still CPDM agents in power who are there to manipulate the opinion of the state. We can appreciate if such a composition will have to do more with the civil society, considering the role he has to play. We just saw the petitions that were made on the list and the composition of the CPDM party before the senatorial elections. A lot of what was said was rejected by the Constitutional Council, already telling you that the Constitutional Council is present to fulfill its obligation and giving confidence to the head of state that they are there for him.
And many are hoping that the 30 remaining senators that are expected to be appointed by the head of state would respect this composition that you are talking about.
In fact, the appointment even by the head of state is another part of the violation of the integrity of the laws of the Senate. When people vote and an executive member appoints for people to be at the legislative organ, for what reason? It will mean now that the Senate, those who are appointed, in fact, the greatest fallacy we found was that the appointed senator from the West was then nominated as the president of the Senate. And you can imagine, when the president of the Senate is appointed by the head of state, it will mean it is not an executive power he's having. It's not a legislative power he's having an executive power. And with executive power, we rule by decrees. And so everything in the Senate, once it is tabled by the executive, it is simply applauded and acclaimed. And never have they contested any decision of the head of state. This is just another center of the will of the head of state, and this will equally go to strengthen and kill the opposition in this country.
Now finally, before we go, you might have a word or two to say about the visit of the head of state to China. He spent some few days there. He was looking at how to strengthen ties, bilateral and economic ties between China and Cameroon. What would be your evaluation of the visit of the head of state to China?
Yeah, the visit to China, you know, this is a financial year that is so overburdened on Cameroonians, equally more, I will mean, not strengthening ties, but economic ties, because Cameroon needs a lot of budget to manage the African Cup of Nations in 2019. We have an electoral year. In fact, all the elections need to be sponsored. And so what the head of state had done with Xi Jinping was to tell him that we are sorry, the amount of money you gave for the computers, you know the story of the Exim Bank China, that gave about 75 billion CFA francs to finance free computers to university students. Now it's an election year. We know we are still owing you. Please, can you do us some favor again? This is an electoral year. Please give us some money and let me use. The funniest thing with Cameroonians is that for 60 years after independence, we are not capable of being financially independent. Everything of yours, including salt, water, and pepper, is still being borrowed and financed in Cameroon by foreigners. Imagine when somebody determined. We just saw the Moroccans, as we were told. When it comes to water, we are still begging water from foreigners. When it comes to electricity, electricity is still provided by foreigners. The railway is still provided by foreigners. The telecommunication sector still being financed by foreigners. I mean, 60 years after independence, 35 years in power, Cameroonians are not capable of claiming autonomy in any of the basic needs of societal, any of the needs of the state. And we still link up to being fueled, we link up to being fed, and everything, even our cars and everything, comes from the external parties. So what independence do we have? What loans have we been taking? How much have we paid? How much is left? When are we going to finish this loan? A lot of questions are still left unanswered.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ako, for joining us tonight on Talking Point. We hope to have you some other time again. Thank you so much for your contribution.
Always be together.
Thank you. The pleasure is ours as well. To our viewers, it was equally wonderful having you with us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinoxe Television. Wishing you a blessed stay in the company of our programs until we meet again. Goodbye.